recording this conversation, so we need to be squeezing bandwidth. So I'd request that if you find your videos turned off, please let them remain off. Please do not turn on your videos. All through this conversation, you will be on mute. You will also be in this call not having a Q&A segment in this event. We're not going to have an audience Q&A segment, and we will not be responding to raised hands. We'll be in conversation with Twyla all the way through till 8:30. If there is an internet or a power outage at any time, we will be back up. So please give us 3 minutes. This building that we live in has a 24-hour backup, so we should be coming back up. You may share your comments at the end of the session in the chat window. And if you'd like to join any of our events in the future, please leave your name, email ID, mobile number, and the city that you live in the chat window, and we will add you to our mailing list. Please note that if any of you is having audio problems or our video is not coming through clearly to you, it could be a problem with Zoom. So please bear with these tech issues. These are not really within our control. We've tested everything to the best of our ability, and we are here on track with the event, having started it on time. So let me introduce today's event to you. What is Happiness Conversations? Happiness Conversations is a series, as I told you, one of the 3 series that we do, which explores the lived experiences of our guests and shares with you what kind of learnings they've had in their life that has led them to understand the true value of happiness. So to introduce today's session, I'll actually lean on a conversation that I had with a young journalist a few days ago. She asked me, Avis, you and Vaani have been through a lot of challenges in your life. You're undergoing one right now. She was referring to our bankruptcy. And she said, you are having an experience of dealing with crisis. What is the role of a crisis in our lives? This was her question. And my reply was that a crisis, first of all, is not a conspiracy by life to vanquish us. It is not a conspiracy to finish us off. Crises come in different shapes and different sizes, in different forms to different people. So some have a relationship challenge, some have a health challenge, some have a financial challenge, and sometimes, very rarely, as is happening around all of us, the whole world has a challenge in the form of COVID-19, for example. So crises come to our lives, and they disrupt our lives. And that is when we begin to wonder if there is a conspiracy, if it is here to finish us off. And what we have learned, Vaani and I, is that crisis is a great teacher. Any crisis is a great teacher. And it comes into your life to teach you to understand a few critical elements about your life, to make you understand what matters to you most and why it matters to you. This clarity comes only through a crisis. So whatever crisis comes your way, embrace it, accept it, celebrate it. One of my favorite poets is Mary Oliver. She is an American poet who passed away in 2018. And she wrote that someone once gave me a box of darkness. Someone once gave me a box of darkness. I realized some years later that that too was a gift. How beautiful. You know, you're gifted a box of darkness and you hate it when it comes to you, but then you realize that that too was a gift. It was a gift in its own way. And that's how a crisis really begins to make sense as you accept it, as you understand it, as you celebrate it. Now, when a crisis comes into your life, you don't want to accept it initially. You want to resist it. You want to fight it Who wants to accept a crisis? So it is difficult, and there is no doubt about it. But such is life, that only through a crisis, we human beings awaken to understand how to be non worrying, non frustrated, and non suffering. If you have learned the art of being non worrying, if you have learned the art of being non frustrated, and if you have learned the art of being non suffering, and I'll talk about these as we go along, then you can only be happy. And that's what Happiness Conversations is all about. It is about celebrating the suchness of life. It is about gracefully accepting life for what it is and finding meaning and value in living fully with what is. Tamil சொல்லப்போனா, to translate it in Tamil, it means எது இருக்கோ அதை வச்சுக்கிட்டு சந்தோஷமா வாழறது பேரு தான் happiness. जो है उसी के साथ गुजारा करना वही happiness है, वही खुशी है. So happiness is living fully with what is, and that's what the Happiness Conversation seeks to explore. Each edition has a guest, and today we have the young, amazing, courageous Twyla with us to share her story, her very powerful story. And the format we have is that we have started on time, and we will go all the way till 8:29, 8:30. We will finish on track at 8:30. You can be assured of that. And Vaani and I will be in conversation with Twyla. Now, let me introduce Twyla for those who don't know her. There are several people who know her who have joined us, but there are maybe some who still don't know her. And we didn't know Twyla or Clement, her partner, her companion, her soulmate. We didn't know these two wonderful people until last year. In July, when at another edition of Happiness Conversations, when we were in conversation with Sundari Sivasubbu, who has a cerebral palsy condition and who's authored a beautiful book called A Bumblebee's Balcony. When we were in conversation with Sundari at the Heritage Madras Literary Society, at the end of the conversation, Twyla and Clement walked up to us. And Twyla, kind of told us very briefly about her journey. And she said she loved our conversation with Sundari. And Clement joined in, introduced himself, and we found here a very happy, very, very beautiful couple that kind of immediately connected with us. We didn't find in that meeting with Twyla even a tinge of sadness, even an iota of self-pity. We felt, on the contrary, that she exuded she exuded confidence, she exuded positivity, and she was radiant and happy. So we said, hey, I told Vaani, Mom, why don't we invite them for coffee? And so a few months later, in October 2019, last year, we met for coffee at Starbucks. That's when Twyla really talked to us about her journey. And she told us how she had been sexually abused by her own uncle, how her family tried to hush up the matter because they felt that the family will come into disrepute if the news got out, how she went through a very lonely, dark phase in her life, trying to make sense of how unjust life had been to her, trying to cope with the unfairness of it all. Must have been so traumatic, Twyla, for you. And in that phase, the only person standing by her was her older sister. Even as she was dealing with all of this, she tried to qualify herself. She started taking up a job. She tried to rebuild her life one step at a time, trying to regain her self-esteem and self-confidence. And somewhere along the way, serendipitously, she got an opportunity to address a congregation of women at a chapel. That day in 2013, Twyla told them her story. Several women in the congregation came and shared their own stories of having been abused. And in that process, Twyla healed. She continues to heal because she addresses people, she works with sex abuse victims and survivors, she gives them perspective, she tells them why they should stand up and be counted and why it is not all over. And most importantly, she's written a beautiful book, Time Unstitched, which released recently, and it will be out soon after this wave of COVID challenges kind of evaporates. And we do hope that happens pretty soon, Twyla. So Twyla is here to share with us her incredible journey of traveling through darkness and hopelessness and finding purpose and happiness in her life. So at this point, I welcome Twyla again, and I invite Vaani to take over from here and start the conversation with Twyla.
Thank you, Avis, and Twyla. Avis and I welcome you and thank you for being on Happiness Conversations.
Thank you.
Yeah, firstly, as a woman, I can relate to what you must have gone through. I know it takes immense courage for you to come and talk about what you have gone through. It's not easy. And I also do know that you're doing this not so much for yourself, but more to help others, which is even more noble thought that you had. Despite what you were going through, you want to reach others who probably going through similar situations or through other kinds of pain, and you want to help people. So that itself shows a great amount of courage from your side. I know this first question of mine is a little difficult, but please bear with me. I mean, being sexually assaulted by a member of your family and not having your family support you in that sense, it can all be very, very traumatic. And how did you cope? I mean, you were very young. You were probably 15. So how did you cope, Twyla? And what would you like to tell us?
First of all, thank you, Avis and Vaani, for this opportunity. And I'll quickly dive into the story. So I had just lost my dad, and I was 15 years old, and it was my father's first death anniversary. And we were pretty shaken already because my dad passed away all of a sudden in a heart attack, and we were in a state of shock. It was a year, but that year literally we were as good as stones. We had not recovered or accepted that he was no more, and we moved to a new city. Everything was new around us, from school to friends to our community. And mom was going through depression. She was under medication. It was as though we lost both our parents because of mom not being emotionally there for anybody. She needed help as well for just everyday routine. We were still coping with just so much that on the first death anniversary, the immediate family was around, and they were staying with us that week. Um, and so as a child, I have grown up with this person. He's my uncle. I have celebrated birthdays with him and Christmas with him, and somebody that we all look up. Not go details. Yeah, I was sexually assaulted on 1st of February 2005, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't even know the fact that what is happening to me. So it broke me. It broke my trust more than the act. I processed the act several years later, but the fact that it was my immediate, somebody I looked up to, took advantage of me was too much to bear. But I bottled all of this up, and I never told anybody. I was in denial for a while. It took me 2 years to even accept about it. I never spoke about it to anybody, and I channelized all of that anger into my studies, education. So I scored well, I studied well. I never wanted anyone to have a hint of what happened, and until it was again, it was Christmas, and the whole family returned back to be with us after 2 years. And I assumed that I'll be okay, because maybe mistake. I didn't want to talk to my mom about it because she was already crushed and saying that somebody abused me, that to immediate family. I thought it'll break her. I thought of all my cousins and about them thinking of their father as somebody who can abuse me. So I thought of all of those things, and I felt that I love my dad and I'm proud of my dad, and I don't want anyone to think that their dad can do this. And they were also in their teenage, so I didn't want to shock anyone. But after 2 years, when he arrived, what I thought was that he would have some level of apology or maybe remorse, or maybe it just happened, it's a one-off thing. But then he started sending me all kinds of sexual texts the morning he arrived, and I was not ready. I had not even gotten out of what happened before, so for me this was like an assault again. And even before I could retaliate or think about what to do, it came across as though I was having an affair with him. So from assault, it went to there was something between us. But I was 17 and he was 45.
Oh my God.
And it was just, I don't know how to accept it. So um, finally, what happened was that in the course of the time, and whenever all our families met and everybody, we were about together 15, 16 of us. So when we all met together as a family, he would probably call me near the kitchen or near the dining area and say, what, I need to talk to you, I need to meet you and all that. And I tried in every way possible saying that, I don't want to meet you, I don't want to talk to you. But that didn't stop. And finally, we had a Christmas dinner in which in front of everybody was given gifts. And since he was coming from abroad, he actually brought gifts for everybody, which he does every year. And everybody got like nice watches and things like that. But I got a lingerie set with a note. And I was so afraid that no one's going to understand that I'm not in it. And he had the audacity and the courage and this thing that he had written a note saying that the next time I'm going to see you in this and it's going to be better. So that broke me, and I had no choice but to expose him. So I spoke to my sister about it, and I told her that this happened, but not in detail, but she kind of understood that it was a sexual assault and that I can't be seeing him every day and that he can't have access to our house. And yeah, and that's how he was.
And this is so traumatic because all this was happening, and people around you knew, but nobody believed you, and you even attempted suicide.
So as soon as my sister got to know and she saw that this was going to drive me crazy, she immediately told my mom and my brother and everybody else. What actually I expected, probably as a 17-year-old, was that they'll, all I thought was that somebody should say they believe me. But I was questioned a lot more than being believed. So it was like, if you can get past it without creating a havoc and a scene, can you do it? It was like that. Initially, mom also didn't know how to respond. She just wanted him to go back, and she was like, everything will become okay, don't worry about it. But that's not the response I wanted. And I waited for 2 years to tell her that this was crushing me and I was living with it. So for me, that took me 10 steps back. It took a hit on everything that I was. Like, who am I was in question now. Because all I wanted was mom to accept that. And then later, of course, my sister insisted that we speak to everybody about it. So we had a couple of family friends who we called up quickly during that week, and we said, this is what has happened. We want to go talk to him about it. So we confronted, and I was uh, all my cousins, all my aunts, all my uncles, grandmother, everybody. And the only thing that was told to me was that I was questioned. What I didn't expect was that I was getting into something not knowing what's coming our way. So we thought that we'll go tell this, we'll show the note, we'll show the text messages, we'll show the laundry set, and everybody would be on our side. But here we were, I was told that I must have tempted him. I am lustful. I
Oh my
had an
God.
affair with him. And then, in fact, if he actually, the only reason they believed was because he confessed that he did it, but then he also said that I liked it. And yeah, I was asked to leave the house, and my whole family was told never to come back again, and that we will never have cousins and aunts and uncles and nobody. And yeah, we were the ones who had to be thrown out of every relationship that we grew up knowing. And yeah, I was given all kinds of titles, and people thought that I'm this person who's after other people's husbands. And though I was really young, all my uncles would run away from me, like I don't know, I'm the one who did. The blame was on me. I was the one who had to defend myself. There was no questions for him.
You know,
It was my fault.
Twyla, virtual hugs to you. I mean, I wish I could just come and give you a hug, but you know what you've gone through is so difficult for somebody. And one thing I don't understand as a woman is already the woman has to go through the ignominy of being assaulted, and on top of it, no one believes her, and people make her feel guilty as if it's her fault. You know, I don't understand, and I don't wish to offer any understanding to such people and ideas. But yeah, hearing you talk, you know, I want to just say what I'm feeling right now. Um, I feel that human beings thrive on love, and you know, especially when you're going through a crisis, you're extremely vulnerable and you're extremely weak. And the thing that you do by you know, very naturally, you kind of turn to your own family, you turn to your mom, your sister, your siblings, you know, to, you know, looking for support, hoping that people will support you. And when you don't get that, what do you do? I mean, what do you do when you don't know what to do? You know, that's probably something that all of us, you know, have to confront at some time in our life. We'll all be put in a situation where we don't know what to do, and we don't know what to do about that. So you know, it's but this whole thing of feeling unloved by the family is something that is that can be very hurting. And here I'm actually remembering the words of Mother Teresa, because she said that the most terrible poverty is not, you know, living without money or anything like that, but it's the fact that you are unloved, and the fact that you are lonely. Nothing can be more, make you feel the sense of poverty more than that. And yeah, I mean, I know I can feel what you've gone through, and I'm actually getting emotional. So I'll let Avis handle this.
I've been, when we did talk about it over coffee, Twyla, at Starbucks in October last year. But you know, but the way you said it now, I have, you know, I'm searching for words And I don't think I should look for those words because everything will be inadequate to what has happened to you. Uh, so I'll pick on what Vaani said, which is what do you do when you don't know what to do? And this is more like a learning I'm taking away from hearing you speak. See, when you're hung at the edge of a precipice, you will believe that it's all over and that you cannot even try to put your life back together. Sometimes life happens in such a manner that you can't make sense of it. And that is what happens to most people who display suicidal tendencies. Twyla, you were just 15, 16, so I can't even, begin to tell you, or even imagine what you must have felt not having seen enough life, being so naive and so, so betrayed by the people and by the context and the circumstances. So people with such tendencies, when you have a suicidal tendency, you're actually having a mental health challenge. And that really means that we need to talk a lot more about faith, but not the way we are introduced to the idea of faith. Not that way, but we have to talk about faith in the context of trusting the process of life. You see, this whole life is a gift. This whole human form is a gift. We've all been created human, and to have this human form is a gift. And when in this human form, you're traumatized, your entire trust in life is shaken. And that is where we must be taught to trust the process of life, because the process of life involves upheavals. But the way trust is presented to us is in the packaging of religion, in the packaging of ritual, and as a means of propitiating a God. But how about looking at trust as trusting the process of life? So when you treat life as a gift and understand that it is coming to you with a set of upheavals, then you have to trust the process to take you forward. This may seem very complex for a 15, 16-year-old person, but such is life. And this whole idea of faith, I'll explore it as we go along. But all I can say is that when you feel lonely, when you feel unloved, you really think there is no way forward. So let me ask you my next question, Twyla. How did you pick up the threads of your life from then on? I mean, from then on, you were at the brink, your sister stood by you, but how did you pick up the threads of your life? What kept you going?
So I went through initially, since I'm a Christian, we went to people who are leaders and who provide counseling and all that. And somewhere I was blamed because it had to be my sins because of which it happened to me.
Wow.
Maybe I didn't have enough faith in God. From asking repentance to everything I did. And then mom was not okay. And then some people were just suggesting that, I'm causing more pressure on a widow. And I didn't know what to do. Not that by now she was also weeping along with me. Only difference was she wasn't communicating that it was hurting for her as much as it was hurting for me. And we always had that miscommunication that, she didn't want to stand up for me. And she always felt that it was a taboo and we don't speak about such things. So there was no room for life to stop. There was no room for me to stop. And I think when you go through trauma, you need some space to breathe. But it was like, okay, you have exams, you have this, life forward. It was all about moving forward, no matter how broken you felt. And at one point, even though my sister was right there and she would listen to me over and over again and she would cry with me and she would not sleep at all. And I know I gave everybody a hard time because home was like this place where there was one child who was constantly locked up and sobbing. But I went into depression and I committed suicide. I attempted to commit suicide and I didn't plan life after that. Because for me, all I put my energy was that I'm being such a big problem to my family, to my dad's My dad was a missionary, so I felt like, okay, his name is getting spoiled. People asking me to repent. It wasn't my fault. None of my cousins or relatives are around anymore. We were just pushed into isolation and silence. And then my mom, after knowing that everybody was blaming us to be sinful, she also stopped talking to her peers. And she also went into depression along with me. So we were both two people who were frustrated with life. And we were just in two different rooms. And then I started focusing on how to end my life because I completely felt unloved. And I felt that what happened to me is who I am. And I was a sexually abused kid, and there was no life beyond that. But things didn't go as planned, and I survived. And when I was at the hospital, I didn't know um, I didn't know why I was alive, but what I felt when I woke up was um, that God is giving me a second chance. But I didn't know at that time what to make of it. But I was like, okay, now I'm alive. Now I have to do something about it. I can't keep trying to kill myself. If it had to happen, it should have happened then. And I still remember that one of the doctors, even the therapist, when I told her what happened and what I did, she said it is unlikely for me to survive. But I did. So I went I came back home, and I would go to a therapist twice a week. And my sister would only tell me that she loves me, that she's there for me, that I'm not a burden, that I could talk to her all the time. And she probably didn't know that that saved my life. Like, the only person who was telling me that I was worth it was her. And yeah, like, I felt constantly that I was not worth it. I felt constantly that I don't deserve to be alive. I felt constantly that I was ashamed. But if there was anybody speaking the truth to me, that was my sister. She's constantly telling me every night she was there for me, she's never gonna leave me, and that I'm beautiful, that everything is gonna be okay, and that I can take my time. So whether I need to skip school or stay in school or do whatever I want. And she probably didn't know that then, that I was only thinking about death. So yeah, that I felt that, okay, if she's believing in me, then it kind of helped me see, okay, what should I do? And I used to be in my room alone in the afternoon, and one day I found one of my dad's Bibles and a verse that he had marked. And I'm just going to read that verse out. So I read that verse, and I came across this verse when I actually asked, like, am I really loved, was my question. And it said that I'm absolutely convinced that nothing living or dead, angelic or demonic, today or tomorrow, high or low, thinkable or unthinkable, absolutely nothing can get between God's love and me. And I felt that this was what gave me strength, and I went into um, trying to find out what is my purpose and how does God see me, because suddenly it said that nothing can separate me from God's love. Uh, Suddenly, uh, the whole view changed for me, because here I was being defined as somebody who's sexually abused. There's nothing that can happen. She's one maniac who has hallucinations. She's on therapy. None of my cousins spoke to me. My family was not invited to any event. We had nobody coming home except just one or two people who stuck by us. And uh, I felt completely unloved. And then here was a verse which said that nothing can separate me from God's love. And I think that spoke to me in a way that it made me want to live. And I went into a journey of finding what is my purpose through God's eyes. Is there life after this? What's going to define me? Is there a purpose? Is there a higher calling? And yeah, that's what happened. I promised God, and I promised everybody at home that I will never commit suicide again.
So grateful to you for telling us this so authentically. When you use the word, you use three important words, and I'll pick on them. One is, you used the word broken world. We lived in separate rooms in a broken world. you said. You said you found yourself completely worthless. And you said that you found yourself imagining that you are the problem, which led to that cyclical effect of you imagining that you're worthless. So the broken world usage of that word reminded me of something that again Mary Oliver, who I quoted earlier, has said. She has said, "It is a very serious thing to be alive on a fresh morning in this broken world." It is a serious thing to be alive on a fresh morning in this broken world. Our worlds are all broken at some time. And yet, every day, a new dawn arrives, a fresh morning arrives. And so, life is a constant flip flop exercise, a yo yoing between hope and despair. And one way to keep us more on the hopeful side is to remember that we are not the problem. We go through a problem. You are not the cancer. I'm not the bankruptcy. You're not the act of sexual abuse. It happened to you. It's an event that happened to you. Because the world is against you, because society is against you, because people are judging you, does not mean that you're worthless. And to have arrived at that learning yourself through your dad's Bible verse, to me, that's your dad blessing you, Twyla. To me, that is your dad's message to you. If he had been around, he would have sat you down and explained to you that you are not worthless. And that was happening to you through a sign of the universe. So that's the magic and beauty of life. If it is not over, it always means there is a reason for you to stay on. And therefore, the way to deal with it is to remember it's a gift and not take it away. You have no right to take away a gift that's been given unto you. So live in acceptance, let go, move on, and let life flow you. That's what I'm picking up. But thank you again for sharing it. It was very, very authentic. Thank you so much. Mom, would you like to take it forward?
Yeah. Twyla, in this time when you were coping with, having to deal with people not understanding you, the trauma of the sexual assault itself, you were also, you had just started your college and you were trying to get yourself academically qualified. And if I remember right, I think you told us that you also started working simultaneously. And two questions here. Did all this, your qualifying, your working, did it help with your self-esteem? And secondly, you were trying to, seek, if I may, a closure from, your family members and maybe also some justice. And when that didn't happen, did this help you? You're going out working, studying. Did it help you?
So I joined a psychology graduate program for 3 years, and I was a regular student, and I had a semester break in between.
Right.
And for some reason, I felt that I had too many hours in my life, which, because I was also on medication and I was still dealing with, I mean, you don't heal overnight. So I was still going back and forth with all these memories and all that. I had that semester break. So I did some research on what do I do? Like, can I do something else? Because I had time and college gets over at 1 o'clock. So I realized that if I could work, I would be able to do it. But will I get a good job? Will I do well in life? Was again a question. And I had a lot of time. So I researched and found people. I also had some of my sister's friends who had started working really young at 17, 18 and are like great leaders today. So I knew that there is an alternate. There's not just one way to do it, but I didn't know if I could take that risk. Um, I did my own set of research and realized that I could work, and that schooling and learning are two different things. And I think for me that changed my perspective, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to stop educating myself. It gives me the choice, and it gives me the confidence, and it helps me do whatever. But I will also learn, and I'll apply somewhere. So the rule in the house was that I can't join any other place except teaching, because they knew I won't get it. But I somehow cleared uh, an interview and I got the job. And then I continued my graduate program simultaneously. During that time, yes, I was seeking closure. So it was after 2-3 years again, and I tried to speak about it again, because it was still something in my mind. I still wanted somebody to hear the whole story, to hear what actually happened that night. But that that really didn't happen. Like every time I brought it up on a weekend, it would be like, okay, it's weekend, don't spoil the dinner. If I say on some other day, it would be, it's weekday, you have work tomorrow, and your life is going so well, you're working, you're doing fine. Uh, why do you want to think of bad things? And it was, I don't know, the intention was not to break me. The intention was because I don't think mom or anybody knew how to accept or deal with this whole thing. We never grew up talking about sex itself. So talking about an assault is hard. And then nobody understood why I had to keep going back and forth. And they just wanted me to move forward. Uh, so it didn't go well. We were back to fighting and quarreling and saying, you're not there for me, I'm not there for you. And my mom would say, I did everything for you, and I'm always there for you. Why do you have to only talk about this? Why do you have to cry? And we went back and forth, and I also had an opportunity to confront my relatives just once, and I think the response was worse than I thought that time would help them, but the response was worse. They actually abused me. They said the meanest things possible to me, and I think that broke me completely, because I mean, I grew up with them, right? So I have pictures and I have memories, and I never thought that people who you live at least 15 years of your life would suddenly be able to chop you off their life and forget about you and just consider you evil. So I think it was that whole thing, and I broke down, because I was like, okay, you know what? This is too much for me to handle. But again, I had the Bible, and so I would read, and I didn't know what to make of it, because here I was fighting for mom to listen to my story and fighting for everybody to say the right words to me and all that. But then I read this. We can research it later in free time. But then he actually says that even if my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. And I felt that somebody that mature, somebody that old, could need uh, could feel that brokenness because of his parents, or could write something like that and need God, which is, like, then maybe I can also go through it and it's fine. And I felt that God strengthened me that day with that. And I think I stopped validating myself through people's eyes. I stopped expecting from that day that anybody else would have to love me for me to feel loved, or have to accept me to feel accepted. And I started reading more and finding what God has to say to me. And I think he always said that he will not forsake.
Amazing, amazing.
Amazing. Twyla, I just want to say here that especially when you're going through a tough time, Avis and I have always used conversations as a tool, because I feel that conversations do help. When you talk about what you're going through, it helps, and which is where therapy comes in, and a lot of them use verbalization of what you've gone through. And when you didn't get that with your family, so you probably were trying to look elsewhere, and that's where that beautiful verse that you quoted from the Bible, made so much sense to you. And also this thing that when uh, you're craving for people to understand you, and when they don't, uh, on one side it can be extremely traumatic, and then on other side it can also seem extremely futile. You might wonder, okay, what is this I'm going through, and why am I craving this understanding? And it can make you desperate. But if you look at it positively, sometimes a crisis can also make you purposeful. It can take you towards doing something positive. But yeah, in your case, I must agree and admit that your crisis was, it's actually a bad incident or a negative incident that took you towards your purpose. Nevertheless, I think it was, life was taking you in a different direction. Uh, that's that's what I feel. Avis.
You know, the feeling of being forsaken is very real. I've been through that myself. During this bankruptcy, I borrowed money from my family, and my mother, for reasons that she had, believed that we had cheated the family and had not repaid the money. And I was called a cheat by my own mother. So I felt that pain, and I know what it means, Twyla. I'm reminded of a very beautiful line from an amazing Hindi film called Lavaris, which is sung by Kishore Kumar, and the line is written by Anjan. And the line is, "Jiska koi nahi, uska to khuda hai yaro." For the one that doesn't have anyone, there is the creator. Jiska koi nahi, uska to khuda hai yaro. So here the idea of God needs to be revisited. At least the way I have revisited the idea of God is, I've gone beyond the idea of God as understood by religion and ritual, and by a place of worship. I have seen that there is greater value in seeing that we have all been created without our asking to be born. There is an act of creation. And as I said earlier, this human form is a miracle. So if we have been so compassionately given this miraculous human form as a gift, then wouldn't we also be given the solution to the problems that we are facing through this human form, through this human existence, through this lifetime? Or rather, if we have been created, wouldn't we be looked after, provided for, cared for? And so, my understanding, and I share this a lot with Vaani, is that the true meaning of faith is to trust that you will be looked after, you will be cared for, and you will be loved by someone who is out there waiting for you. And it's a matter of time that you connect with that person. So to me, that idea of God, that godliness in the human creation, other forms of human creation. You talked about your sister, how she stood by you. That's your God. You talked about how the verse came into your hand, that even if your father or mother forsakes you, God will receive you. How that came into your hand. Now that's godliness. And that is what I'm talking about. That was the faith that I was talking about. So interesting. But let's move on with your story. I have a question here. The chapel. It's very serendipitous that at this time when you are struggling with so many dark realities, an opportunity to speak to a congregation of about 50 women at a chapel comes by. So how did the opportunity come, and how did you develop the courage to wear your life on your sleeve and share your journey that day?
So I had moved to Bangalore, and I was working in an IT company now, and it had been some time, and I would be vocal about assault, but not really talk about it so much. But I had made a decision that I'm going to be vocal about it. And I came to Chennai for a short weekend when one of my teachers who knew that I had gone through sexual assault in school met me, and she met me after so many years, and she was asking me how I'm doing, what's happening. And then she told me that there was a personality development week that was going on in college, and she wanted me to speak. And the topic, of course, was around personality development because I was in training. And she also said that, it's about self-worth and more self-esteem, because they're wanting students to be confident as they pass out of their graduate programs and things like that. So i I didn't know if I can do this, but I realized that, I'm constantly saying that people should support people, and that we should talk more about it, and I'm struggling. But here I was, not sharing my story with anybody, and being and hiding in a corner, and I was just like, maybe I should give this a shot. I should talk about it, and it is going to be about self-worth. So let me talk about how I dealt with self-worth and what happened to me. But I was afraid because there were professors, there were just so many people, and nobody knew what I was going to talk about, and it was still a taboo. And I was like, what if they get upset with me? But I thought that if it makes a difference to maybe one person, then I'll continue to do it. If not, I'm just going to be quiet, because this is where it is. I had no clue what's going to happen, and I had no clue how it's going to be accepted. But I prepared something from psychology around self-esteem, and also about, I still remember, neural pathways in our brains and how we deal with all of that. And then I thought I'll share my story. So before me was a speaker, and everybody applauded, and there were lots of body language and gestures and all of that. And once she finished, it was my turn to go up and deliver this 20-minute talk. And I went up and I spoke about self-esteem from a psychological point of view, and then I brought in my story, and I ended. What happened was that there was complete silence, and there was just nobody, even there was no gesture. There was just like cold silence. So I was very sure that everyone's upset with me, because not the teachers, not the students, nobody was even nodding back in acknowledgement of anything. So I was like, okay, I've made the grandest mistake of my life, and I quickly ended and I came down. But after the event, I had more than 10-15 women who walked up to me. Out of that, there was one particular person who told me that as I was speaking about um, the verse, the fact that, there is life beyond abuse, she said she was contemplating suicide that week.
Wow.
And she told me her plan, and she broke down, and she said, I couldn't imagine that there is life after that, that anybody would come up, speak, you'll get work, everything would be normal, that, and apart from that, there were so many people, and in fact there were more than 2 professors who told that they had been sexually assaulted, and they have not even confessed it in their marriage, and they struggle with memories, and they're still healing from it, and they have children, and that they felt that, they will also talk about it, they will also go back to their departments and discuss it. So yeah, it was in that moment I was I cried, because I felt like I was thinking, this is the worst part of me, this is the most shameful part of me, and it could never be discussed. And here people were saying, thank you for sharing with us, and I had emails written to me which gave me the courage to continue on, and to feel that, yeah, this is something I need to talk more about, and that this is my purpose.
Oh, you've just done a master class on how your purpose finds you. Unwittingly, you've just shared how purpose finds you in life. I'm sure you wondered about this question, Twyla, and to all our audience tonight, I'm sure this question has struck you as well. Why do good people have to go through bad times? Good and bad is only a social label. We all go through different times. We go through different events in our lives. And some are what we expect, and so we we love them and this is what we want, and the ones that we hate and we don't want, we call them bad. So why do good people go through bad times? I think everyone goes through a life experience only to awaken to their higher purpose, because life has created you to fulfill its own desire of achieving something through you. When that woman walked up to Twyla and cried, and shared her story, and said, I was contemplating suicide, I think in that moment, Twyla's decision to wear her life on her sleeve and be vulnerable was validated. In that moment, I think an awakening happened for Twyla, which is that there is a reason why I went through what I went through, because I can now tell this person, and I can tell this to a lot of people, that uh, if you are being put through a challenging phase, go through it, because it will only make you a stronger person. It will only make you move towards your life's purpose. So thank you. That was very beautifully shared, and I want everyone to just take this away. Whenever you encounter a no-go situation in life, whenever you are hung at the edge of that precipice, Vaani and I have been hanging there for 13 years now. Please know that there is a reason for it. There is a reason to your creation. There is a reason to your challenges, and through that, when you wear that experience of yours on your sleeve and you share it with people, you will be amazed at how much love comes your way. And you will be amazed at how useful you can be at a time when you think you're totally worthless. Thank you. Thank you, Twyla. I'll pass it back to Vaani for her next question. Mom, keep a watch on time.
Yes, I will.
We need to move fast. Twyla and
Yes. Yeah. Twyla, there's also this factor of anger within you. I want to ask you, how did you deal with something like anger and, the a kind of hatred towards this person who perpetrated this sexual assault on you? And how did you heal from that rage within you?
So, remember going to be my 25th birthday, and I was writing down. I would read a lot. I would write a lot, and I had started writing poetries by then. Um, I used to write a journal, and I used to write almost every day. And one day I realized that yes, I'm able to talk about it. I'm able to work, and I'm doing really well in so many areas of my life. But there was one area where I was constantly bottling up anger. And when I started writing, I discovered that I uh, had a lot of anger that I didn't know what to do with it. And when I thought about it, and I prayed about it, and I finally realized that that's just eating me away, and it's not worth my peace. And what peace does to you is very different. And again, that I have a choice, and right now I'm giving that control to the person and saying, okay, let him eat away my my peace and my joy. And I realized that joy comes from not from what happens to me. It comes from what I choose to do with what happens to my life. And I took some time. I wrote a lot. I did a lot of reflective studies. I prayed a lot. I met people um, who I confessed to people. I talked about it. I had a lot of other people who had come into my life by then, whether it was my friends or whether it was other people from church who supported me. I spoke to them about it, and I kind of made a decision one day to let it go. And I honestly thought that it's not worth it. I don't think a piece of my heart requires anger. I wanted to free it up and probably write like a liberation story, a victory story with that. And I realized that when I let go of that anger, I cried a lot one day, and I wept and wept because I had so much of anger. But I decided to forgive him, and I felt that I had that power to forgive him. And I did forgive him. I'm not saying that I forgot what he did to me, or at any point of time I feel like meeting him. No, I don't. But I definitely had a piece of my heart which was completely caught up with anger, liberated. And here I was. I started writing more. I started um, expressing more, and I think I was able to. What I understood was that I don't have to bear not even the shame of it. Like it's always like it's 50-50. Okay, the incident happened, but I should have done this, I should have won that, I should have understood. None of that. I freed myself from it. I completely believe that the ownership is his. He had a choice and he decided to act on lust, and I couldn't do anything about his choice. And Yeah, I mean, it's just like another project. It was his project. Why should I take ownership of what he did? I take ownership of what I do, and I choose to forgive. I choose not to be angry for the rest of my life. I choose to love, and I choose to be free. And I think that day I kind of unshackled myself from anger, and it took a long time. It still takes time. Sometimes I'm still angered up. I still go through memories, and I feel like, oh my God, I wish I could do something to him. And I remind myself that he doesn't deserve that. And Yeah, it's not my place to hate. I could use that much of feelings and all of those emotions and invest it in liberating my life and everybody else in whatever way I can. So I think that you know that project hate is gone, and it's his problem.
Twyla, you're amazing. And while I just picked the learnings from what you said, Avis, maybe you could share what Twyla wrote, her book. She. I'm glad you wrote a book on your learnings and what happened to you, because what you shared about uh, the fact that you have to let go eventually. You have to just let go of whatever happened to you. You have to let go of whatever is bothering you. You spoke about the inner peace. You have to find that inner peace from within you. It's not like somebody else is going to find that for you. And therefore, although it may seem a little difficult, when you find that inner peace, then you don't want to let that go at any cost. You don't want to let that peace go at any cost. And anything, whoever that person is who's causing that peace to be disturbed, you will not want them anywhere near you. And I remember you telling us when you met that this person you felt did not even deserve your hatred. And therefore you started doing things that give you joy. You started writing poetry. You wrote this beautiful book, Time Unstitched. And I'm hoping that COVID-19 lifts the chill from around the world so that people can actually buy this book from Amazon and read it. Um, that's what I felt. Avis.
Yeah, I want to say that when I hear Twyla talk about Project Hate is over, I see that as true enlightenment, Twyla. The whole world has been fed on this idea, which that it is not that someone fed this idea, but people generally imbibed it. That you get enlightened only when you sit under a tree. It's not true at all. Enlightenment is understanding the beauty and magic of this imperfect life. Enlightenment is understanding that the true treasure you have is your inner peace. So when you say Project 8 is over, Twyla, what I'm actually hearing you say is that Project Happiness has taken over, and that no matter what you've been put through, you will be happy with the life that you have. And that is a great moment of enlightenment. Another favorite poet of mine, Rumi, has said, Jalaluddin Rumi, he said, the wound is where the light enters. And this is the light of that enlightenment, that the joy of forgiveness lights up your life when you let go of resentment. There is great joy in forgiveness, and I'm glad you decided to move on. I'm going to ask you two last questions, Mom, just to manage time better. I'm going for the last two questions for the
Yeah,
evening.
yeah, yeah,
So
sure.
the first question, Twyla, is, and we'll keep them answers very sharp. Um, the first question is on the beautiful relationship that you have, the companionship that you and Clement share. So, how did you meet Clement, and how does he complete you? Very simple question.
Clement and I worked together in an NGO. I was uh, I was in training, and he joined as corporate communications, uh, and we did corporate trainings together. And yeah, from the uh, we were colleagues, and then he moved out. He went into research, and then we reconnected again. And when we reconnected again, we spoke about so many different things, and I remember talking about sexual abuse. But I've spoken about it to a lot of other people too. So what stood out for me was that he took out this journal and asked me what is the healing plan, because he still felt that a lot more healing was needed. And I didn't know how to respond to it. And he was a person who wouldn't brush anything under the carpet. It had to be confronted. If it needed, he'll go for training. If it needed, he has to equip himself with more knowledge, then more it is. And I was wondering why a friend of mine wants to do so much to support me. And then later, uh, with everything that he did, he was very transparent, very honest, very enthusiastic about life. And he kept life very simple. And if it meant having tea, then Clement would have it with all the energy, all the joy, all the life in him. He's not somebody who's going to wait for big moments. He's going to make the tiniest moment a very big moment. And I found that extremely amazing because, yeah, it changed my life. And later he proposed to me, and we got married. And even when it came to marriage and romance, not only was he very sensitive, but he genuinely believed that I was a hero, and I didn't have to feel this only in his presence. He would talk about me all the time in places where people were extremely uncomfortable about sexual assault, but he would educate them, tell them what it means, tell them that it has nothing to do with the person, and like go extra miles. And he would do it for any of my other friends who've gone through abuse of any format or any other thing. So I kind of realized this is who he is, this is the person he is, and he would walk that extra mile with absolutely anybody else also. The other thing that people thought was that he wouldn't, that we don't enjoy romance as much, because somebody who's been abused might always have difficulty. Yes, there are long-term effects of sexual assault in terms of physical health and mental health and all of that, but I think Clement um, always spoke to me about it. We did everything in our capacity to ensure that I felt safe, I felt sheltered, I felt protected, I felt extremely loved. And I'm sure that there is a huge difference between intimacy when you're in love and when you get assaulted. So I think those two can't be compared. And in our marriage, we both completely are in love and enjoy every bit of romance. And I don't think it comes in your way. It does. I'm not saying that there is no effect and it doesn't come. It comes. But again, I have Clement, and he's not just sensitive, but he's he takes every effort to ensure that I'm okay. And yeah, we both are fine. And mental health is something that is priority. And we stop work, we stop life, we stop absolutely everything. We don't brush off anything under the carpet if it is related to health.
That's such a profound outlook that Clement brings to your partnership. Uh, you know, I've often seen, and this has happened in your life twice now already, Twyla. One is your sister, and the other is Clement. Every time you feel forsaken, every time you feel lost, every time you feel there is no way out, life will always show you the way. Life will always send you a lifeboat. Life will show you, send you a shepherd at times, and who will take you along on the journey. So I've noticed this, and so has Vaani. And in your story, I'm picking up these two instances. The only way I can summarize your companionship with Clement and I pray that it stays that way, is that you both are rising in love. You know, the common misconception about love is that you fall in love. So when you fall in love, there is every chance that you fall out of love. But what if you rise in love? What if you are constantly loving? When And I love the way you said we are in love. So it's, you know, marriage has not been a full stop for you people. For many people, marriage is a full stop. It defines a phase. Before marriage we were like this, after marriage we've become like this, and so marriage places a full stop. But if you let marriage flow, if you let the companionship flow, if you let the loving flow in the present continuous sense, then you will discover it's so magical. And that's what has happened with Vaani and me. 33 years of companionship. We have changed as people. The way we look has changed. Our physicality has changed. Our lives have been thrown and tossed around through this bankruptcy, particularly last 13 years. We've been numbed financially. We've been driven to the corner, pushed and nailed on the ground, and yet our loving has not changed. And so when you rise in love, magic happens. I hope that magic always keeps you and Clement together and going. Now to the last question of the evening. What and this is going back to our meeting at the Madras Literary Society last year in July. We didn't notice it then, and we didn't notice it today, and we will perhaps never notice it in you. No self-pity and no sadness. So how do you deal with ideas of everyday life like unfairness of it? I mean, why should Twyla have gone through this? So has this entire experience changed your outlook to what is fair, what is unfair, what is religion, what is God, what is faith, and what is your ultimate idea of happiness? Is that something that you've learned through this experience? So keep your answer very, very sharp, maybe 3 minutes, and then I'll do a wrap.
Big question, but I'll try and wrap it for you. What I think is that this is a broken world, and in this world, we're not looking at a perfect life. So in each of our spaces, we all have our own storms. Some start with a single drop, some is a full-on tsunami. However your storm has started, and whatever that storm might be, you don't have to go through assault. It could be just loneliness. It could be absolutely anything. This is not the perfect world. And so we have God to help us overcome the difficulties right now. And I also feel that my identity is not what happens to me. So when I detach, when I look at myself and I say, oh, you know what, sexual abuse happened to me, and like that, so many other things would happen to me. And that's not who I am. Who I am is a child of God. I am is I'm loved. Who I am is precious. Who I am is chosen. Who I am is unique and in every other way beautiful. And I think that that's what is everyone around me. And I don't think that what happens to us is who we are. And as long as we're able to remove our identity from that and not allow whatever is happening to us to define us, then we would be in a better place. And it could be even the positive thing, because it won't last. This world is temporary, that's what I feel. And we're all going through these changes, and we need to embrace the good and the bad. And even today, as so many people have joined, I just know that there's so much of strength, and there is an army of people who love me. There's an army of people who love you both. And there's this army that has joined over the years and has supported me. So I can't allow just one person who assaulted me that night to define my entire life and everybody else's effort in loving me and loving each other. So I think we're a very strong community, and we're very much healing, and we will be able to heal better if we know that, you know, we're all together, and pain is not something that only I feel. Everyone else feels pain in their own way, and it's not unique in that sense.
What's your idea of happiness? One last line. I'm picking up a lot from what you said, but one last statement on your idea of happiness.
Happiness is being with each other and being there for each other and having a community, even if it's just few people, but just having those few people around, that's happiness.
Thank you. Thank you. What you just shared in response to my question, Twyla, is actually a very profound answer. You have just separated the difference between spirituality and religious perspective. You know what pain does to all of us is makes us understand the impermanent and transient nature of life. The moment you understand the impermanent and transient nature of life, you awaken to a whole new meaning of life. And that is spirituality. Spirituality is the flowering of that inner awareness. Religion tries a lot to help us understand this, but it makes bad spaghetti of a very good recipe. I've often felt that. So what you just shared is a deeply spiritual perspective, and thank you for that. Osho, one of the other thinkers that I admire, of course, he has his own human failings, but his thoughts were very profound. And one of his most profound thoughts is that the fragrance of a spiritual person cannot be missed. The fragrance of a spiritual person cannot be missed, he says. And across the internet waves, I can feel your fragrance. That's what I can say. The beauty of the learning that you've had from this experience, from this traumatic experience that would have crushed so many people. This learning, the beauty of that is so fragrant. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. And happiness, of course, your answer was very simple, very profound again. To conclude today's, in the next 5 to 6 minutes, I will be bringing this conversation to a close. And please bear with me as I gather my thoughts and share with you what I'm taking away from here tonight. As you were speaking, Twyla, I actually didn't want you to stop. Not only because your articulation was so powerful, but also because a person like you needs to reach more and more people. You are the shepherd for a lot of people out there, and that's the purpose that life has defined for you, perhaps. So I was reminded of this beautiful song from a movie called Imtihan. It released in 1974, and the lyrics are by Majroo Sultanpuri, and he says, "Ruk jana nahi, tu kahin haar ke, kaanton pe chal ke milenge, saaye bahar ke." Which means, O Rahi, he continues. So he says, "O voyager of life, don't get beaten by life and get defeated by life. Don't stop. It is only by walking on the thorns can you reach the bed of roses." So, such is life. We all have to go through our upheavals to awaken. We all have to go through the challenges of life in order to find that bed of roses. And sometimes the bed of roses may not be the way we imagined it to be. It'll be completely different. But you have to go through that journey. And that is what is interesting about life. At least once in your lifetime, no matter who you are, no matter which God you pray to, no matter what religion or ritual you practice, no matter what social strata you are part of, what gender you're part of, at some point, at least once in your life, if not more times, you will be tossed around and you will be pushed to the ground and you will be smashed to smithereens. And then, when you feel totally lost in all the darkness, you will find yourself. That is the beauty and magic of life. Again, Rumi, another of my favorite poets who I quoted before, says that your darkness blesses you. Your pain blesses you. Your darkness is your candle, he says. So for Twyla, her trauma, her pain, eventually showed her the light. And that light has brought her to write a book, Time Unstitched. How many of us can articulate our pain and make it into a work of art, like the way Twyla has done. She's taken her broken heart and made it into art, as Carrie Fisher would have said. And that is the beauty of life. So today's session to me is in a celebration of this suchness, that to go through the thorns of life, you have to go through the thorns of life in order to find the bed of roses. And Twyla, thank you for being with us this evening, for sharing your journey so candidly, so authentically. You're very precious. You're very courageous. And, we, both Vaani and I and everyone here, we all bless you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you for spreading the message of happiness and for helping all of us take away some very precious life lessons. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Twyla. Thank you for joining, and thank you for sharing your story with all of us.
For everyone out there, a couple of announcements. We have our next conversation coming up, which is a free Zoom event on the 5th of May. It's called The Uncommon Leader. We have another amazing guest, Madhavi Latha, who's a banker. She was struck by polio when she was just 7 months old. She's wheelchair dependent, but she is also the president of the Wheelchair Basketball Federation of India. And it is her story of how she has made this a very thriving sporting body in India, which has touched more than 650 people with disabilities. That's Madhavi Latha, Uncommon Leader, 5th of May, free event on Zoom. Then on the 30th of May, we have Bliss Catchers, the next edition, where we have designer Vaishali Srinivasan and film appreciator and film lover Kishore Lakshminarayanan on the conversation with me. That's on 30th of May. If you liked today's conversation and you'd like to register for future conversations, please reach out to us. You may leave your name, email ID, mobile number, and the city that you live in on the chat here, or you may reach us through one of the channels. You may also message us on this number over here. Let me try and pull up that number very quickly for you. You may message us on this number over here. 98409-78823. 98409-78823. That's an India number, and you could message there, and you can keep receiving our invitations for all our free events. Please help Vaani and me spread the message of happiness, inspire happiness. Stay in touch, all of you, and please also Google us, HAPPYNESSWALAS, HAPPYNESSWALAS. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you once again, Twyla. Stay safe, everyone. Stay at home, and let's all together overcome. So that brings us to the end of today's program. I'd like to invite some of you to stay back on this call while I change the screen for us to take a picture, and then we can all get going. So let me now change the view. Yeah, so we have a better view, and quickly we'll be taking pictures. So hello everybody. The event is over, but I do hope if you liked the event, please leave some your thoughts with us. And whoever is taking the picture, please go ahead, take the picture. Please turn on your videos. Yeah, that's a good idea. Please turn on your videos. I'm stopping recording.